Hello, guys, and welcome back to the community. Today I have.
Sister Martha Ann Kirk, an incarnate word sister, a sister of charity of the incarnate word, who had a mother who went to Incarnate Word College in the 1940s. And it has been my joy to enter the convent in 1962 and to spend most of the time on the very same campus as a student at Incarnate Word College, then as a teacher, and I'm always joyful meeting new students.
Well, so speaking of Incarnate Word, how has working at Incarnate Word shaped you into the person you are today?
The Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word started because 10% of the population of the city of San Antonio was dying of cholera, smallpox, contagious diseases in the mid 1800s. And Bishop Claude Dubuis, you know Dubuis Hall on our campus, he wrote to France, to some cloistered sisters in France, our Lord Jesus Christ suffering seeks relief at your hands. And so that's basically what we do. We listen to where there is suffering in the world, where there is need in the world, and we try to respond as best we can. So we were nurses in the beginning, and healthcare professions are really important to us. But there's so many ways that people are suffering, not just suffering physically, but suffering psychologically, suffering because of poverty, because of war. So I feel like these are the sisters that I belong in. And secondly, there is a part of our Constitution that says we bring the saving and healing love of the incarnate Word, and that means Jesus Christ. We bring the saving and healing love of the incarnate Word through the promotion of human dignity. And that is really important to me. I have taught a class based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I often say I am multilingual. Well, what do I mean by that? I can speak the language of human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a secular document. Or I can say, in the world's great religion, we find this idea, whether we're talking about Hinduism, namaste, the divine within me respects the divine within you, or we're talking about compassionate Buddhism that cares about the other. Have you ever noticed the Buddha statues where they're like 100 arms, 100 hands?
Yes, I have.
Well, that means reaching out to help, reaching out to be kind.
Interesting.
So I can speak secular language, I can speak compassion language of the great religions of the world, or I can speak Catholic language. And I can say that the Catholic social justice themes are really important, and we have to live those out, respecting human dignity, caring about the poor and the vulnerable, caring about the environment. So I am grateful that I am a university teacher because that gives one the opportunity to learn in very broad ways and to share in very broad ways.
I think that's like perfect and like beautiful that like you mentioned like the Sisters of Charity started out as like nursing and like caring for others, because I think that's portrayed now in our school, because whenever we go to college at Incarnate Word, we are told that it is required to do 64 hours, I believe, of community service.
45.
45, sorry.
It would be great. You want to do 60? Good.
What's it called? It is a requirement that we have community service, and I think that ties back to the Sisters of Charity, where they went out and went to go help others and look out for the needy. And
I love that you are bringing this up. I am vintage. I am grateful. God has let me live 80 years. And so last year was the 60th anniversary of my vows as a sister.
Wow.
So I was a part of the faculty group in the 1980s that said, we really want for our students to grasp deeper mission, not just oh, I'm going to come here, I'm going to learn a trade, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get money, I'm going to be rich. No, we are about making a better world. We are about being humans for others, being compassionate. So we, the faculty in the 1980, were working on curriculum revision, and the new curriculum started in 1990, and it said, do 24 hours of service learning. And what that means is within classes, teachers get students thinking about issues. Maybe it is food insecurity in the city of San Antonio. Then you do a project, and while you are doing the project, you keep thinking about this issue of food insecurity. And then at the end, you do a reflection on what you've learned. And as as a first year student, you're just kind of getting a grasp of things. But second, third, fourth year, you analyze, why is there food insecurity in the city of San Antonio? And what are some things we might do to change that? And I'll try to say this pretty quickly, but San Antonio, as a number of other places in the U.S., has been kept back by redlining. All right, that there was an Anglo population that pushed Mexican Americans to the west, that pushed black people to the east, inferior education on the west and the east, lack of opportunity to get bank loans, start small businesses, just inferior opportunities on the east and west side. Now that is called redlining. And you can even see deeds that say this house may not be sold to a black person or a Mexican American. This house may only be sold to a white person. And this has caused intergenerational poverty. So, of large cities in the United States of America, San Antonio is the third poorest city. And that is so sad. So as you progress in school, you should be doing more and more analysis. Okay, what can we do now to change the redlining of the past? For example, if you're in education, You could be a tutor for second graders on the West Side. Because if you don't have strong reading ability by the third grade, that is the strongest predictor that you are probably not going to graduate from high school.
Interesting.
So we want for our students to be doing service learning that is analytical, that's getting to the roots of problems, that is doing transformation for a better city and a better world. Okay, so I was among the faculty that said 24 hours of service learning, and then we said, give students an opportunity to volunteer, to pick what they might like to do for those other 21 hours. So right now I am very active with the Service Learning Committee, and we are working to get more service learning integrated into the curriculum, because typically today students are just picking, what's an easy thing for me to go do?
Yeah.
And they're not getting the guided analytical thinking that you get in a class. So thank you for asking me about this.
No problem. What's called? I find that like really interesting that like y'all thought about like showing people the I I I didn't say about like the quote unquote like lower parts of society, the ones that are shunned aside. And
Disadvantaged.
yeah, disadvantaged. That's what I was thinking about. They're disadvantaged because of the situations that have been put on them years ago, and like decades ago, and that us like analyzing them and like showing like what is the issue there, it can help that when we graduate we can make an effort to change that because we are more knowledgeable in the topics and what is going wrong in our society. I
I love what you're saying, but you're saying when we graduate, we can make a difference.
ooh
You can make a difference while you are still in school. And I'm going to give you an example of an excellent service learning project that is really making a difference now. I know that you are a nursing major.
yes ma'am.
We had a very fine nursing professor, and she was working with people who are in graduate school. And I had a small grant for teachers to learn about human trafficking. And unfortunately, San Antonio is really a crossroads of human trafficking with 35, 37, I-10, and I'm making a general statement, but men are trafficked more for labor. Women are trafficked more for sex. But there's some men that are trafficked for sex, and there's some women who are trafficked for labor.
Of course.
And so people would be brought into women would be brought into the emergency room who had been raped. Well, was this just a one-time rape, or were they being held by a pimp and they were caught in prostitution? So our very good nursing faculty and students came up with very intelligent questions and very good things to look for in an emergency room so you could start to unravel, is this the victim of human trafficking? Our nursing people did, and they wrote about it, they published about it, and there are all these emergency rooms that are using this, which was developed as service learning
That's
by our people. I'm so proud of them. And it was Dr. Jean Doles who was the lead professor on that.
that
She's in Houston now.
that's actually like beautiful that like we found a way to like of course sadly it's not going to stop all of it, but it definitely helps minimize as much as we can
Yeah.
in that regard. And especially when that's such a big issue, and like especially with like I'm gonna say this like with all like the Epstein stuff that's been coming out and all the other like horrible like manipulative societies that have been coming out where people are trafficking all the time. This kind of stuff helps minimize that,
Yes.
and it helps like us take like a step forward in the right direction rather than all the steps back that we've been seeing in our society.
Yes.
And speaking of the like our society and like government and all that kind of stuff like that, over the phone call you talked about being a committee of the Women's UN, right?
Yes. Uh, Thanks for asking about that. As I said, I'm vintage, and I was in graduate school in the 1970s, and I had a wonderful friend. Eventually, she was on my doctoral faculty, helping me with things, and she helped me to start thinking about United Nations goals and issues. So that was in the 1970s. I was getting a master's degree at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Then in the 1980s, UN women were working towards the huge conference in Beijing. And that really made a difference because women were setting global goals. Then in the 1990s, people started talking about Jubilee. In the Bible, in Hebrew scriptures, you read that in the 50th year, there should be a jubilee. And the way that is laid out in Hebrew scriptures is you forgive people's debts, and that redistributes property and land. So let's think about this. Let's say you're a landowner and people can't pay their debts, and so they're kind of in bondage to you. They're sort of like your slaves or your servants, and you are getting more and more and more wealth. In the 50th year, you need to forgive the debts.
Okay.
And that is called the Jubilee year in the Bible. So people in the world said the year 2000 is going to be a Jubilee year. And we want to invite the wealthy countries in the world to forgive the debts of the poorest countries in the world. So in the 70s, I was thinking of UN goals. In the 80s, I was thinking of UN goals. In the 90s, I was thinking of these goals that would go towards the Jubilee year. And we were somewhat effective. I would have liked for us to be much more effective, but there were a number of extremely poor countries that were forgiven debts
Oh, yeah.
in the year 2000. And I don't know how much you have studied economics, but economics is about goods and services flowing around. You know, you pay me, I've made some money, I buy stuff from you, then you buy stuff from the next person, and you want things to be flowing. Bad economy is getting stuck. This person gets wealth. This person gets more wealth. This person gets even more wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And it is harming the flow of goods and services in the whole world. You may not realize that in the middle of last summer,
Mm-hmm.
the structure for the largest transfer of funds, money, services from the poor to the rich in the history of the world happened. In the
Really?
middle of last summer, the structure was set up for the largest transfer of the goods of the poor to the wealthy in the history of the whole world. So, what are some of the things that are going on?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you small examples. That Catholic Charities typically feeds 80,000 school children that don't have lunches in the summer
Mm-hmm.
in the United States. There were 80,000 school children who didn't get lunches during the summer.
Dang.
Then I apologize that I am not remembering the exact figure,
Mm-hmm.
but it is something like 600,000 people in disadvantaged countries have died because there is not the usual U.S. aid. With the usual U.S. aid, there would be things like buy grain from a wheat farmer
Mm-hmm.
in the U.S., get the grain to the people of Sudan, save them from starvation, and help the wheat farmer in the U.S. Because U.S. aid has been cut back. As I say, it's a number something like 600,000
Yeah.
people have died since the summer.
That's a
Then I
lot.
want to get closer to home because you are a nursing
Mm-hmm.
student. Within the United States, there has been a normal economy of healthcare. So, do you need this and this for your diabetes? What do you need for other healthcare?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening is over 60,000 people a year are dying in the United States because they are not getting the health care benefits that they have been getting. So that is going to continue each year.
Yeah.
About 60,000 unnecessary deaths in the United States of America. So it is essential that students today learn how to think about government and that they are very active in voting. They are very active in causes, speaking out for health care, speaking out for food security, speaking out for solid educational opportunities. Um, it has been my joy to see students do some really good things in the last few months. In the city of San Antonio, there is a group called Students for Peace,
Mm-hmm.
and Claire Lewis at Northwest Vista College is the organizer, and I know her. She's been working with the Peace Center at Northwest Vista College, and I am one of the founders of the Peace Center way back in the 1990s. And so Claire has been organizing student walkouts, student marches,
Mm-hmm.
students protesting. And so I was with, I would take a guess, maybe 400 students and friends in Main Plaza, where there were speeches, and then we marched towards the Alamo. And then I invited Claire and some other students to be part of an online conference on democracy. And Claire has done a lot of good research.
Mm-hmm.
In that presentation in the online conference on democracy, about 30% of the people in the US right now do not know how our government works at all. They don't understand that there are three branches of government, that it's a system of checks and balances,
Mm-hmm.
and that they should be, calling on each other because we want justice. Justice is good for all of us. We want human rights. That is enshrined. That is why we founded the United States of America, because we wanted to have basic human rights. So this is an absolutely wonderful time that students in so many places are rising up. And I really appreciate that here in the city of San Antonio, Claire and others are especially vocal about immigrants and their human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to realize that, say you are in a country like Honduras, where there is a lot of gang takeover. If gangs come and threaten you, if your life is in danger, it is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that you have a right to go to another country and ask for asylum.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to tell you about a personal experience. This is not like, well, I read in the newspaper. That some of our sisters work with the Immigrant Welcome Coalition,
Mm-hmm.
IWC. And a Presbyterian minister whom I knew years ago founded that, and it's an absolutely wonderful group.
Mm-hmm.
So people whose lives were threatened in other countries have come to our border and ask for asylum. And then they need to wait until they get a court hearing if there is proof that they have a right to stay here. So the sister that you met was going to the bus station. There was a mother from Honduras and her 4-year-old little boy, and they couldn't get a bus to where one of her relatives. They were in the detention center in Corn City.
Okay.
They couldn't get a bus to where her relative lived in another state, so they
Mm-hmm.
came to spend the night at our house. We were sitting at our kitchen table, and the woman said, a gang came to our home. They cut off my brother's head. I picked up my 4-year-old and I started fleeing, 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 fleeing until I got to the border here and I begged for asylum. I don't, I want, I can't go back to that area where they are just recklessly killing people.
Dang.
Yeah, yes, those are the kinds of things that are going on. And so I really appreciate that there are young people in this city educated enough to know about human rights, and there are young people in this city who are not just sitting around playing video games all day, but they are out there speaking up. They are out there, and this is about one of our students, a graduate student in Com Arts. He also works for National Public Radio, and so he went to Dilley, Texas, about 2-hour drive from here.
Okay.
4 other of our Incarnate Word sisters and I, we got in a van. We went to Dilley, Texas. We gathered in the Central Park there, and a Unitarian Universalist minister did a wonderful job of organizing, and in a couple of days she had gotten hundreds of people to come. You could see a Franciscan priest, you could see a lot of other Roman collars of various types of ministers. And there were the Incarnate Word sisters, there were the Daughters of Charity sisters, there were the Holy Spirit sisters, and there was a fourth group. I think maybe it was the Bridgetine or the Presentation sisters. So we walked about 2 miles, and we walked past a prison, and then finally we got to the gates of it's called something like the Family Detention Center. And that is the largest detention center in the state of Texas. And I don't know if you realize that though Michigan's been getting a lot of publicity, Texas is the place where there are the most immigrants held in detention.
Yeah, there's a lot
And
here.
the reason why we were doing it on that day is because Representative Castro said that he was going to visit that detention center on that day because 5-year-old Liam was being held there
kid.
with his father. And so we wanted to have a lot of people praying at the gates of the detention center so we could get some media coverage while Representative Castro was on the inside. So you could say that we were successful, but not successful enough. That after all of that attention, the following week, 5-year-old Liam and his father were released
Yeah.
from there. But at this point, they have been deported, and I have no idea if they are back in the midst of violence in their country. I don't know what has happened since they were deported. So
That topic reminded me of Alexander Trevor. I last interview I did was with him, and as you know, he grew up in the UK and immigrated
Yes.
here, and so we talked about immigration a bit, and I had brought up that like there's this stigma against immigrants where it's like, oh, they're here to harm us, they're here to like take our jobs, do all this, like ruin our society. And it's like, no, they want to help us, and they want to have a better life with us, because like for instance, like you said, the woman from Honduras, she literally went through a terrible experience, like something that you never want to go through in your life, and escaped her to have her freedom, have her life, and it was a struggle. As you said, like she was like struggling to find a place to stay, or like find a place to go, and or finding like a means to get there. And then also like there's somebody in my class. He works at not a detention center, but he works at one of those like refugee camps and stuff like that. And so that he was explaining that there was like a lot of Afghani people there, and so they're also fleeing from active war zones, and so they've also seen horrible things, terrible things, and they're just trying to have a better life here. And like what I talked about with Trevor Alexander was that like the stigma like goes as far as saying that they want to harm America and they don't want to help out with our society. But then Trevor Alexander himself literally joined the U.S. military and helped us like serve our missions. And so he served our country. He's literally working for our country and working to that we could have a better future in our country. And like I think the stigma against immigrants is so skewed, and now more than ever it is becoming more like noticed that like, oh hey, these are people, these are just people that want to live the best life that they can, they're coming here to do that. And I think we're noticing more now than ever how split America is in that regard.
Listen, I am so glad that you are thinking about these issues. And international students are immigrants. They go from one country to another. And because it is so difficult to get a visa right now in the United States of America, the international students are down quite a bit. And
Interesting.
we are $9 billion poorer because the international students come and they pay their tuition and their dorms and their food and the normal things that you do in the U.S. So is it good that the United States is $9 billion poorer now because we don't have as many international students? And closer to home, at Incarnate Word, it's making it hard for everyone because our international students have been paying full tuition, whereas, you know, many of the U.S. students are getting different kinds of benefit and aid. So what is going to happen if we don't get our international students again? You U.S. people are going to have to start paying more tuition because we just can't operate without the millions that we were getting from our international students.
Yeah, whenever you take out funds from one thing, funds have to come back from somewhere else. So then the only funds that they can pull back from are us U.S. students. Yeah.
Right now, we have a wonderful creative project going on at Incarnate Word, and it's, I think, a 2 or a 3-year project. And it started with an art exhibit in the fall semester, and then it will move towards a musical performance. And the musical performance will be based on the story of a person in the era of the Nazis. So a woman who was, you know, fleeing Hitler. She was an immigrant. So we're going to end with a musical performance about fleeing the Nazis, that immigrant. But the art exhibit that we had a lot of taped voices and a lot of photos of people who are on our campus now. So in the art department, there was like this slideshow, uh, and I was like, oh, somebody I work with. He's about in his 50s now. And look how he looked in his 20s when he was an exchange student coming to the US. And oh, that voice, I know who that person is. Okay, on our campus right now, the Dean of Research and Graduate Studies is from South Africa. The Dean of the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences is from Argentina. A main librarian is from Iran. The Dean of Nursing and Health Professions is from Poland.
That's
If immigrants are bad, we have lost most of the administration of Incarnate Word.
and further on, that's something that like we talked about like actually in Bishop Trevor Alexander's class was that sorry what was that like our society our like America itself was founded on immigration itself. So then
Yeah.
when you take out the foundation, like for instance, something that was brought up in class was that up until last year, there was no official language in America because what's called the founding fathers had realized, oh hey, like our main 13 colonies came from England, Spain, Germany, Dutch, like French,
Italian.
yeah, Italians, and then the Irish came over later, and like, and then as we expanded, the Chinese and Japanese came over on the. Sorry, I every time I think about it, I have to do the northeast, southwest, the west coast, and then like Mexico came out from the south, and then the French Canadians came from the north, and so like it's a bunch of different cultures and languages and stuff like that. So you can't just pinpoint and say, oh, we are all this one kind of thing. And then now with this like new administration, there's this thing on like deleting history and taking what's called away like the culture of what's supposed to be America as a melting pot or like a fusion of cultures.
I am interested in being compassionate. I am interested in every person as a reflection of the divine image. But we could also come at this from a purely financial point of view. Silicon Valley has had geniuses, and billions are made in Silicon Valley. It is because there is such a combination of cultures. The people from India, the people from Pakistan, the people from Germany, the people from Lithuania, the people from Venezuela, that to really do great work, you need thinking from all angles. And Silicon Valley has been full of people from all over the world, and their ideas have generated so much. You can study all over the world that countries who have a solid flow of immigrants have better industries, better research, better education, better health care, because they're getting the brains. I had an opportunity to have a sabbatical in Israel, Palestine in 1995. So you have to realize I have a doctorate in theology. I've studied the Bible a whole lot. My dissertation was about women of the Bible. I like to go to the Middle East, and I really like to do Muslim, Jewish, Christian comparative studies. I got an email a couple of hours ago that in the last 2 years, 100,000 Israelis have left Israel because the democracy is crumbling, that the current government is turning to violence, suppression, lack of human rights. The current leader of Israel is corrupt, and the email said brain drain. It is not like, the poor that are leaving Israel. It is the best professors and the best
Minds.
doctors and the people of means, because they can't stand how bad the government is now. Okay, so I have been in that area 13 times. That really makes me feel good to hold up this book. I started it on my sabbatical. I was between Jerusalem and Bethlehem at Tantur Ecumenical Institute. So the Vatican, the Catholic Center, said, we need a place where Muslims, Jews, Christians, Methodists, Presbyterians, Orthodox Catholics, where all these different groups can come together and learn from each other. So I feel very privileged that I got to be a scholar in residence there. And you can remember when I spoke to your class, I was saying that I was mentored by one of the top Catholics, Father Tom Stransky, who wrote the document about we need to respect all faiths. God is bigger than any of us. But I want to get back to while I was there in the 1990s, again and again and again, I would be in areas, I would listen to people that Palestinian human rights were not respected. Okay, I grew up in Texas in the 1950s. I lived in a little town where our middle class white neighborhood had paved streets, had sidewalks, and we had solid houses, We weren't living in palaces in our little town, but we had solid middle class houses like you see in much of San Antonio. But in the 1950s, here was the black neighborhood that did not have paved streets, did not have sidewalks, and had segregated schools that were inferior. So when I went to Israel, Palestine for the first time in 1991, I knew there were problems there, so I thought, okay, it's going to be like my little town in Texas. The Palestinians are going to be pushed over here, and they're sort of, going to have kind of shacks and no paved streets, and the Israelis are going to be over here, and they're going to have middle class. But when I went there in 1991, I had no idea of how bad it was going to be. That the Palestinian university students who could not get from their home here to Berzay University there, they would have to go through like a border, like,
Okay.
going from here to Mexico. And young men, especially, might be harassed. They might have to sit there in the sun, and it's hot there, like it is here.
Yeah.
So imagine yourself sitting in the sun for 3 hours, and you can't get through the checkpoint, and then you are missing all of your morning classes, and you are hot and you are angry. So I have been again and again and again seeing how Palestinians are not given their basic human rights. Okay, so last May, I had an opportunity to be part of a delegation of church leaders to go there to try to see what was going on, to tell about it in the U.S., to try to promote peace. So Reverend Julie Rowe, a Lutheran minister here in San Antonio, she's a chaplain at University Hospital, really good hospital chaplain, that we went to a conference at the Jerusalem Convention Center. We were among over 5,000 Israelis. The conference was sponsored by 60 different groups working for peace right now. Environmental groups who say, we don't need for all of the olive trees and all of the farming in Gaza to be destroyed because we are not getting the tomatoes that we like to get in Jerusalem because all of the fields in Gaza have been destroyed now. So at that conference, which was called It's Time for Peace, it's time to stop the violence, there were environmental groups, there were there were healthcare groups, there were educational groups. You can't imagine all of the Israeli groups there. The Israeli group against house demolition, stop bulldozing Palestinian houses. And really importantly, there were rabbis for human rights. And so ever since I was there on sabbatical in 1995, I have known the organization Rabbis for Human Rights, and this is really pretty wonderful. When I was getting my doctorate in Berkeley, there was a Jewish center, and I was taking 2 of my doctoral classes from this wonderful professor, Dr. Joe Milgram. Her son, who is a rabbi, founded Rabbis for Human Rights in Jerusalem.
Wow.
So I got to be with her son, Rabbi Jeremy Milgram, and then whenever I say that I've been there 13 times, a good number of those times I've taken groups of students and professors from UIW to go on these trips to see the biblical places, but also to learn about human rights And I'm especially interested in women. So we would meet Jewish women, we would meet Muslim women, we would meet Christian women, and again and again, Rabbi Jeremy Milgram would talk to us about human rights in that area. So, okay, so last May I was with 5,000 people in the Jerusalem Convention Center, and they were Israeli citizens saying, we could live side by side with Arabic speaking Palestinians, but we have to start giving them equal human rights. So the democracy of Israel is not going to be safe until every person there has human rights. And you know what? The United States of America is not going to be safe until every person has human rights. I am old enough that I can remember when in California, Watts was burning. That was because people did not have equal human rights.
I find it important that you bring up the human rights because in the presentation that you had with Imam Omar Shakir, what's called, which will be my next guest that I will have on, what's called, you talked about how in school you grew up with the ideal that like, oh yeah, people are people, like everybody's a person, and then when it came time for your birthday, you invite the whole entire class, and then do you want to tell the rest of the story there?
Yes, so it's going to be my 8th birthday. Everybody come to my birthday party. And then we go out to recess, and one of the white little girls in the class says, you mean you're going to invite the Mexicans to go over to your house? And I was so hurt. I mean, I was just really hurt because everybody was my friend.
Yeah.
But I want to say education really makes a difference. My mother, growing up, she was born in 1923. So my mother was growing up in the 20s. My mother was growing up in the 30s. So at that time, blacks and Mexican Americans were hardly getting any education in that area. Our great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, my mama's grandfather, German-speaking from Alsace-Lorraine, German, French, little teeny country. He gave an acre of his land so that all the other farmers and ranchers could come and build a one-room schoolhouse, and it had one teacher, 8 grades in that little one-room schoolhouse. So my mother and the other children of the farmers went there. So if you want to call them the whites in that area had the German school, like my grandmother went to the German school where you learn German, and then eventually you learned a little bit of English, but German was the first language. And then in my mama's school, you learned English. But there wasn't anything for the Mexican Americans there. They just had to work in the fields. So that is what my mama would have seen, but she came to Incarnate Word College. So, what was going on at Incarnate Word College in 1940? We had a whole lot of Irish sisters who were my mama's teachers. We had some sisters from France. We had some sisters from Germany and Czechoslovakia, but very, very relevant to our conversation right now. We had Sister Adriana Escobar, and she was from Mexico. And Sister Adriana was, short. She wasn't real big, but she was a power woman. Basically, she was running like a junior college so that Mexican young women could come to Incarnate Word College. They would become really, really good bilingually. They would get lots of skills, and on paper, they graduated as bilingual secretaries. But what happened is they went back to Mexico, and many of them weren't just secretaries. They started to run their own companies, to sell arts and crafts and to run restaurants and to have food companies. So Sister Adriana Escobar was bringing a generation of Mexican women who rose economically. But also, Sister Adriana was my mama's Spanish teacher. And my mama minored in Spanish, and my mother was fun. So Sister Adriana said, there's a family in Mexico City, and they want someone to speak English to their high school age daughter all summer so that she will get better. And Ada, you're really a nice person. They will buy you a train ticket, and you will have a really nice time with them all summer long. So my mama was, yeah. So, here she is from this town of about 5,000 or 6,000 from this farm, and she's going to go to one of the biggest cities in the world.
That's cool.
When she gets there, this is not an ordinary family. This is the Postmaster General of Mexico. So these were the types of things that happened. The King of Belgium came to Mexico City and was entertained in their home. Just all sorts of ambassadors and really important people were constantly visiting at the home. And so the high school girl's name was Lourdes, and my mama and I went to Mexico City once, and we went to visit the home of the adult woman, Lourdes, and she just loved it that my mama came back to
awesome.
have a visit with her. But I'm telling you this very long story because my mama thought of Mexicans not just as equals, but, wow, that the Mexicans she knew were of a much higher social class and were much wealthier than our family. So when I am a little child, I am not thinking of the Mexican Americans in Cuero as inferior people. I am thinking of them as, wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about 5 or maybe going on 6, and there was an International Lions Club conference in Mexico City, and my father was active in the Lions Club. And my mama was like, oh, go back to Mexico City. So she was there in 1943
Mm-hmm.
as a student. I was born in 1945. So, as I say, I was about 5 years old. So, it was about 1950.
Okay.
So, my mother was returning to Mexico City about 7 years after she had had the good experience
Mm-hmm.
there. So, as a 5 year old, I am playing with all of these Mexican children. They don't know English. I don't know Spanish, but I'm having a wonderful time playing with the children in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm in the 3rd grade, and there is this white girl who doesn't, I shouldn't say doesn't like, but looks down on the Mexican Americans in our class.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got a better thing. So this is what I hope is happening for you. You are at Incarnate Word, where Hamza from Gaza is your classmate,
Mm-hmm.
and Nawal from Saudi Arabia is your classmate. And then we've got other students right now from at least a dozen countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you are learning, oh, these are students just like me. And I'm going to give like a particular example. You are in nursing classes, you are in biology and chemistry classes, you become friends.
Mm-hmm.
So they graduate, you graduate, and you can be the people who 10 years from now are doing really important research together about international nursing or in biology, from country to country.
Mm-hmm.
You are doing research together. So, whenever I said to you that because we don't have as many international students right now, the United States of America is $9 billion poorer.
Mm-hmm.
What's even worse is you're not building the friendships with all of the internationals that you would usually be building friendships with. So 10 years from now, there are not going to be those international businesses. There's not going to be that international research going on.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you brought up the international relationships because what's it called? I have friends from other countries that
Mm-hmm.
were born and raised and still live in other countries. I have this Japanese friend. Her name is Kai,
Mm-hmm.
and she is actually I think she's just about to go into college. She's going to study to do politics and like do like foreign policy is what she specifically wants to do. So she's going to be in charge of those foreign relations and stuff like that. And I find it really like cool that you mentioned that because whenever she told me that I was like, wow, that's a really important thing because especially with like Japan and their manufacturing and like you know how many like cars and stuff we get from like Japan.
Yeah.
What's called having the foreign relations like that and being able to say that I know somebody that's going to be on foreign relations is
Yeah.
really crazy. And I found it really interesting that you brought up the like the women in society and like how your mom like she was just like strong like and like advocate of women and also other cultures. What's called, as you may know, it is Women's History Month as of the time of recording, and
Great.
so what was like your biggest like idol as like a woman, or like your biggest inspiration as a woman growing up?
Um, I could approach that in many ways, but we are right next to this beautiful carving that I got in Cambodia of Mary holding Jesus. And over on the wall, you see pictures of biblical women. And so the women of the Bible have been very, very influential for me. And in Luke's gospel, that the angel Gabriel says to Mary, "You will have a child." And she says yes. I mean, she could have, like, no.
Yeah.
But she says yes. She's willing to carry Jesus. She's willing to bring the love of Jesus Christ into the world. Then we read that Mary goes to help her cousin Elizabeth. And there is the very, very beautiful canticle. My soul proclaims the greatness of God. Or, Catholics like to use Latin. It's called the Magnificat canticle. And so, as I was doing advanced scripture studies, I really studied that part of Luke's gospel. And Mary says, "The mighty shall be put down, and the lowly shall be raised up. The hungry shall be filled, and the rich shall be sent away empty." So whether I am, writing books, or whether I am doing drama and dance, I love thinking about Mary and thinking about Elizabeth. I am a dancer. My doctoral dissertation in theology and the arts involved dramatizing the women of the Bible and dancing the women of the Bible. So for my 60th anniversary as a sister, we were again dancing. I used to dance the young Mary. Now I dance the 80-year-old Elizabeth who gets pregnant with John the Baptist. Nothing like having the white hair and wrinkles. You can do different biblical characters at different times. So, Mary and women of the Bible are very important to me. And I would like to talk about Mary of Magdala, or we say Mary Magdalene, because she was an important part of my doctoral dissertation. In John's gospel, the male disciples flee from Jesus, and he carries his cross and he is dying on the cross. And it's Mary Magdalene and Mary, his mother, who are there in all of the pain of someone being crucified. Then we read in John's gospel that Mary Magdalene goes back to the tomb. They had to bury the body of Jesus really quickly because the Sabbath was coming, and she goes back because she wants to anoint the body with oil, as you did in those times. And she can't find the body, and she thinks that it's a gardener there in the garden. And then she she hears Mary, her name, and she realizes that that is Jesus Christ, risen from the dead. And she wants to hold on to him. Wow, she thought he was dead, and she went, and he says, "Don't cling to me. Go and tell my brothers." So Christ is saying, you, a woman, go talk to the men. You go be a teacher of resurrection. And she doesn't want to. And if you want to look at Jewish law, women are not allowed to be witnesses. Only males are allowed to be witnesses. And she's very frightened and confused. But this is such a central idea. In Christianity, women are sent to teach about Jesus Christ. And I could go into much more about what are the traditions that are now ordaining women. Most of the mainline Christian traditions are ordaining women. We've got Episcopal priests and Episcopal bishops. We've got Lutheran women ministers. We've got a lot of Lutheran women bishops. Methodists have the largest number of women who are ordained of the main Christian traditions.
That's awesome.
And then it's really interesting when you get into the Orthodox groups, the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, the Syrian Orthodox. Okay, in this book, I have the prayer that was used for ordaining women deacons, like in the 300s. This is the prayer we use for ordaining women deacons. So in those Orthodox traditions, women deacons were pretty strong, pretty many of them, until about 1,000 or so. And then they kind of declined in importance. But I think 2 years ago in Zimbabwe, a woman was ordained an Orthodox deacon, or if you want to say deaconess, you can say deaconess, or you can say an Orthodox woman deacon. So that's pretty exciting. That's
That is really
pretty
exciting.
wonderful. So, next part of my life
Sorry.
that's really important. In 1975, Sister Dot Ettling, and at Incarnate Word, we have the Ettling Center that was named for Sister Dot Ettling. She and I got in a car. We drove to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, picked up Sister Mary Walden and Ursuline's sister, and picked up Ada Maria Esasi Diaz. She was from Cuba, and eventually she became a really famous woman theologian and writer. And we drove to Detroit. And over Thanksgiving holidays, there was the first Catholic Women's Ordination Conference. And the question was, why can't women be ordained priest? So we had the excellent biblical scholar Donald Sr., and he said, as a good scholar, there's not really any reason. And we had a lot of scholars. I mention him by name because Then he was on the Catholic Church biblical research group to look at Scripture. And when the Vatican, the Pope, would not accept the best honest scholarship, he withdrew from the committee. Why would I stay on a Catholic church? So let's say you were a biologist
Okay.
and you did your best biological research and you turned it in, and they wouldn't accept your best biological research. So you would say, this committee is a sham. I am leaving this committee. So Don Sr. stepped off of the Catholic committee because he said it's a sham. They are not accepting the best research. Okay, so in the last 50 years, that has continued. And these are the areas that we need to look at. We need to look at the Bible, and we need to look at history of Christian churches through the ages. And we need to ask the question, is this a package dropped from God? Women are inferior. Or is this related to prejudice in different parts of the world? Well, if the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, some groups of Baptists, the Episcopalians, the Pentecostals, lots of groups say, no, this is time bound. This prejudice is related to human weakness. It's not a package dropped from God that women are inferior and shouldn't be ordained. So this is pretty exciting. Sister Dot Etling has died. Sister Mary Walden has died. The theologian Ada Maria Isasitias has died. But I am going to the 50th anniversary Women's Ordination Conference in Detroit in the middle of May. I already have my registration. I already have my plane ticket. And not only am I going, but because my body is still healthy, I am going to be dancing prayer in the Sunday service. So at the first Women's Ordination Conference in Detroit in 1975, there was a beautiful, beautiful dance done by this woman, Carla De Sola. So I was seeing her in 1975, and I was in awe of the beauty of this dancer. And it was evening service by low light, by candlelight. And a little after she danced, they said, any woman in the big room here who feels that God is calling her to ordination, please stand up. So I stood up. And then they asked, would we be willing to be part of a study? And so at that time, 100 regular men, Catholic priests, had gone through a battery of psychological tests. What is your maturity? What is your stability? So I was among the 100 women who went through the same battery of psychological tests that the men went through. And I can remember because I was in New York City getting a second master's degree at Fordham, and all of these arrangements were made for a psychologist in New York City to ask me all of these questions. I think part of it was written also, like what are your attitudes on different things, and that came out as a book by Fran Furter called to Break Bread. And how do you think we women compared with the men who were priests? See, people were saying, you're crazy. You are crazy that you think you're called to be priest. We came out healthier. We came out
That's amazing.
psychologically healthier than the 100 men. And it's not that I think the priests at that time were unbalanced or something, but I'll tell you what was going on, that they had high school seminaries. So think of when you entered high school, what was your maturity level? So if at that point you would be put in a school with all high school boys, and you wouldn't be doing normal dating, you wouldn't be doing just kind of all the normal stuff that boys do. It's only the seminary boys football team and only the seminary boys together having a movie on Friday night. They missed the normal socialization that comes from talking to girls. Just the normal kind of growing up stuff. And that's why they were scoring lower in psychological test.
Interesting. That is really interesting. That like the lack of like kind of like experience and like socialization with that can affect your psychological test.
And see, I don't know if you have any sisters or anything like that, but just think of normal home life. You're living with your mother, you're living with your sisters, you are with girls in school. And if you were in this very isolated world of all males from about 14 until 24 or 25, like 10 years in an isolated male world. But I want to say one more thing, that Carla Di Sola in 1974 started a sacred dance group at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine in New York City, the largest cathedral of the whole world, and has done absolutely beautiful things of interpreting Bible stories in dance, interpreting hymns and psalms in dance. And so she was doing that from 94 until 1990 in New York City, and people just loved the beauty of it. So as a student, I went and I was getting a master's at Fordham, a Jesuit university, but I was going over and I was doing workshops with Carla Di Sola and just loving her at the cathedral. In 1990, so many people were dying of AIDS. And in New York City, she had seen friend after friend die of AIDS. And her husband was originally from Berkeley, and he had just retired. So Arthur said, why don't we move from New York City to Berkeley, and you could get a master's at the theological schools there in Berkeley. You could teach dance in the theology schools in Berkeley. So she did that. So from 1990 on, she was teaching religious dance at Pacific School of Religion and the other schools there.
That's awesome.
And so she developed one dance company on the East Coast, which is very, very strong. And then she's had a dance company on the West Coast, and she's still relating a little bit to dancers there. So in 2013, we were at a national Catholic, no, it wasn't a Catholic conference. We were at a national Christian conference. And in 2013, her husband had died at that point.
Aw.
And she said, Martha, I gave all of my letters and programs and everything to the archives at the Graduate Theological Union, but my stuff could sit in boxes forever. There needs to be someone who would tell my story, write my biography. So the way you came here with a camera, I went to Berkeley, California, the summer of 2013, a little bit of grant money from Incarnate Word for me to get a plane ticket and get there. And I recorded 27 segments of like half hour or so interviews of her. And I got them transcribed. And so this book is the transcriptions with my writing the context of the different parts of her life and putting it together with photographs that are in the archives.
That's beautiful.
You know, for example, this was New York City. I'm taking a guess. This would have been about 78. And that is an exquisite dance, The Passion According to Mary. And so Mary is remembering what it was like to stand at the cross of Jesus and to watch him suffer. So in 1976, so okay, think of it this way. 1776 was the founding of the U.S. So in 1976, in Philadelphia, there were all sorts of celebrations of the 200th anniversary of the U.S. Well, the Catholic Church had what is called a Eucharistic Congress. So every few years or 5 years or 10 years, something like that, in a different part of the world, there is an international Catholic conference that is reflecting on Christ in some way. So the one in 1976 in Philadelphia was the Eucharist and the hungers of the human family. So Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who fed the hungry in India, she was a main speaker. I'm not sure if you have studied Dorothy Day, but Dorothy Day founded the Catholic Worker Movement, which takes care of homeless and hungry people. So here in San Antonio, we have had a Catholic worker house, and in many, many U.S. cities, there are Catholic worker houses. So when the Pope came to the U.S., the last Pope, Francis,
Okay.
he said, in the United States, you have had some really good people. You had Abraham Lincoln, you had Martin Luther King Jr., and you had Dorothy Day, who started this movement taking care of all of these homeless and hungry people. Okay, I can't go into all of the details, but Dorothy Day, before she had any religion, she had a number of men that she was with, and she got pregnant, and she had an abortion, and eventually she became a Catholic, and eventually she started the first Catholic worker house in New York City. And she was a journalist. She was always writing really good newspaper articles and everything. This is just another little thing to throw in, that she was among the suffragettes protesting for women to get the vote. And she was on the lawn of the White House, and they arrested all the suffragettes, and she spent time in jail. Made women get the vote. So that's the kind of person Dorothy Day was. Okay. When Carla de Sola was young, she felt a lack of meaning. So her godmother, Beatrice Butos, said, go work with Dorothy Day at the Catholic Worker House. And so Carla, let me think, she had graduated from Juilliard, one of the best places to study dance, music, drama, Juilliard in New York City. So I would say maybe she was 25 or so.
Okay. Yeah.
And she went to work with Dorothy Day. So it really, really touched her. You know, feeding all of these hungry people from New York City that came, and you would talk to them. That was what Dorothy Day was so strong on. You know, you don't just give food to the homeless,
Yeah.
but you become friends with them.
Make connections with them.
Yeah, you relate to them. So that started transforming Carla, and it was at the Catholic Worker that she was asked to dance in a Catholic service. So that was the beginning of her not just being a modern dancer in New York City that was doing performances and getting good reviews in the New York Times, but she was dancing prayer. And she went on to dance prayer in this church and dance prayer in that church and dance prayer in another church and start the dance company at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine. Now, this interview with me could go on for 4 hours more, but I think I'm going to try to wrap it up with the next story. But then you can ask me other questions. So at this point, the Catholic Church of New York City would like for the Vatican, the Universal Catholic Church, to name Dorothy Day a saint. Well, this is the way it works with somebody becoming a saint in the Catholic Church. You gather people who knew them, and you get stories about the person, and the basic thing is, how do they practice faith? How do they practice hope? How do they practice charity? At the same time, you're just getting all of the evidence that you can about that person. So Dorothy Day had an abortion. Has that closed off that she may ever be a saint? Because the Catholic Church is saying abortion is really bad. Okay, this is a very strange thing. When Pope Francis came to the United States, he talked about who are some of the greatest, holiest people that have lived in the United States. He talked about Dorothy Day.
Yeah,
He
he
didn't
did.
say we're writing that woman off because she had an abortion when she was young. So when the Catholic Church in New York City wanted to get a whole lot of information about Dorothy Day, they called Carla de Sola because she had volunteered
That's
when
cool.
she was young. And so I was absolutely fascinated because I have never been up close to this kind of, how does somebody become a saint? So, someplace in this book, I have pictures of Carla de Sola dancing at Dorothy Day's place. So we don't see Dorothy Day and Carla in a picture together,
Okay.
but we see Carla dancing prayer at Dorothy Day's place. And how did we get these pictures? That Dorothy Day's granddaughter wrote a book about her, and Carla went to the gathering in Berkeley to hear her talk about the book, and the woman said, "You're Carla de Sola. My grandmother left some pictures of you, and I have not known what to do with the pictures. So as soon as I get home, I will send you the pictures." So, got those pictures in my
That's
book now.
cool. That that's actually crazy way.
Yes, 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 yes. When I went to Berkeley in 1980 to start my doctoral studies, the first semester I took a class on dance in religions. And so I said, oh, in San Antonio, all of these Mexican Americans, we have matachines dances in San Antonio. So my first semester, I wrote a research paper, and I called Sister Maria Teresa Flores, my friend in San Antonio, and I said, hey, go over to those churches in San Antonio and take some pictures of the matachines dancing there. So Sister Maria, my friend, she took a whole lot of pictures here, in San Antonio. I wrote this paper, and my wonderful teacher, Doug Adams, said, that is exciting. You have got to expand that into a book. So I started my doctoral studies in 1980, and in 1983, my first book came out. So
That is
that made
cool.
me feel really good that I hadn't even graduated and I had a book.
That is beautiful. I found it so interesting whenever like over call you told me that you were in the process of writing a book, and then when I came here, seeing like all these books that you've written, and not only does it like spread like the culture, like what I'm trying to do with this channel is like spread the culture and like and history like of people. You're doing it with the book in writing form, and you add like pictures to showcase like the culture and like showcase like how things look, and then as I can see here, you go into depth talking about all this.
There is an important theme in my life of speaking. Okay, when I went to Incarnate Word College, the Vietnam War was raging, and Brooks Army Medical Center was one of the most important places in the United States of America for burns. And so hundreds of people who were burned in Vietnam were brought to the burn ward there. So the same way you guys, do some community service on Sunday afternoons, some of the sisters and I would go over there and we would try to cheer up the men. It happened to all be men in the burn ward. And so at first I would say, "Oh, thank you for your service in Vietnam. You are really helping to make a better world. I appreciate your sacrifice." But like they were like meat, they were so burned. And seeing them week after week after week, and then one of my classmates who had been drafted, he was killed, and my cousins I had, let me see, 4 cousins in Vietnam, and they were being traumatized by the violence that they were seeing around them. And one of those cousins has died alone in Tennessee. He had post-traumatic stress syndrome all his life. He kept alienating people. He died alone. I found his obituary. 2 other cousins who were in Vietnam were around Agent Orange, and they both have Parkinson's, and one is in Virginia with really bad Parkinson's and deafness and anger from the post-traumatic stress syndrome. The other one is here in Rockport, and he gets really good care from his wife, but the Parkinson's is awful. And whenever the medication is not steady, he goes back into the post-traumatic stress syndrome and is just so angry and so troubled. In the Bible, when they talk about being possessed by demons, post-traumatic stress syndrome is possessed by demons. And I don't know how well you know the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they deal with the post-traumatic stress syndrome from the Greek wars at the time. And a physician who did some of the best work with Vietnam veterans, he was analyzing the Iliad and the Odyssey. So, okay, where am I going with all this? War needs to be prevented. In war, everyone loses, especially the children. The children who lose parents, the children right now in the United States of America who are getting inferior education and health care because billions of dollars are going for us to bomb Venezuela, bomb Gaza, bomb Iran, billions of dollars to bomb places, make orphans there, deprive children here of what they need. And what do you see? Hold this. What do you see?
I see what I can only assume to be Jesus on the cross, and I can already see what's called that he has the nail over the heart and on his leg.
And what do you see about his right leg?
Oh, it's missing the ankle.
Yes, the right leg below the knee is missing. This was carved in Cambodia. That was carved in Cambodia. I was in a Catholic church workshop to give jobs to the victims of landmines. At the time of the Vietnam War in the 1970s, the United States buried thousands of landmines in Southeast Asia. The United States buried thousands of landmines in Cambodia in the 1970s. When I was there at Angkor Wat, that's the area, in 2006, about 2 people a day were losing their legs, losing their hands, or losing their eyes because, for example, they would go to follow cows in a field and they would step on a landmine, or the rice paddies, there would be an unfound landmine. So not only did I go to the Catholic Church workshop where they were giving jobs to victims of landmines, I went to what was called the Landmine Museum. So, I was expecting to see those metal cases of landmines, and I did, and they said, made in the USA. But what absolutely tore my heart out is there were lots of teenagers there without arms, without legs, and because their families were so poor, they were not able to take care of someone with a disability. So the Landmine Museum had 2 things. Children who had been pushed out of their homes and, the metal stuff. And it had a lot of information about a man who was leading efforts to find and dig up mines. And it's really, really dangerous. You have like a metal detector, and you just go really, really carefully with your metal detector. And you find. So if that was 2006, I don't know if the stats are still 2 people a day being killed by the landmines we buried. But let me tell you that Jody Williams, who got a Nobel Peace Prize, started the campaign to ban landmines in the world. And a huge number of countries have signed that treaty. The United States of America refuses to sign the treaty to ban landmines. We make landmines. We sell landmines.
Oh.
We are greedy in the United States of America. So you can buy landmines to put in the fields, and then 40 years from now, children that don't even remember the war can lose their arms and legs and eyes.
That's sad. That's really sad.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how many hours do you want me to talk? So
What?
that's a lot more than you can use.
Yeah, I will bring up one thing that you said earlier, the Agent Orange and stuff like that. I think I mentioned it in one of my previous videos, but my grandfather, he actually fought in Vietnam, and he got the Agent Orange on him, and he had to go to the Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. He lost his battle in 2020, and then my grandma.
But you knew him.
Yeah,
Is that
which I
why
was
you're
lucky.
doing what you're doing, because you knew your grandfather?
But partially because like what's it called he told me like a lot of stories and stuff like that, and like towards the end, what's it called, like he was confined to a bed and all he could do was tell stories, and so whenever I would go and visit, what's it called, like everyone was always in the living room with my grandma talking with her, I would go into his room and listen to him tell me stories from like his childhood and all that kind of stuff, and he would tell me like some stories about the war and stuff like that. But towards the end, he started to lose a lot of his memories, and things became like really fuzzy. He had like false memories and stuff like that. But I would still like sit there and listen to him speak. And so then, yeah, part of why I started this channel was because I guess like I had a sense of missing, like listening to his stories. I miss him in that regard, and but also like I could tell whenever like I sat there and listened to him, not only did it mean a lot for my grandma because barely anybody went in there because of how like kind of like sad it was to watch him deteriorate. What's it called? It made him happy because he could have like a laugh and all that kind of stuff about like some of the stuff that he's been through. Like for instance, I think I talked about in one of my other videos. He grew up in the backwoods of Kentucky. And he went to school in one of those like one room schools.
Like my mama.
Yep. And what's it called? He told me about the story of him making moonshine with his friends. And what's it called? So him and his friend gets this big stone mason barrel, put all the ingredients to make moonshine, and let it ferment for like a week or two. Come back. There's leaves on it, like open jar. There's leaves in it, and then there's a dead bird on top of the mixture.
Ooh.
And my grandpa, he's very not wasteful, so he swept off the leaves and the dead bird, and him and his best friend still drank it all.
Well, with fermentation, it probably killed the germs.
Yeah.
But that's such a gross story.
Oh, it's so gross.
It's
but like
so gross.
him telling me that story when I was younger, and like him seeing my reaction to that, it made him laugh and like for a minute forget the pain that he was in, forget all that stuff that he was in.
Yeah.
And so I love to hear people speak about like their stories and stuff like that, because whether it like if it's sad sometimes that they can find somebody to relate in, or if it's happy they can get away from the pain for a little bit in that regard, and that was really important for me in that sense.
Oh, wow. That, like, whether or not you realize it, that may be why you were drawn to be a healer.
Yeah, I think so too, because especially when he was later on, like when he was deteriorating a lot,
Yeah.
he ended up on hospice care and all that kind of stuff. So all we could do was like medicate him to where like it'd be a painless death.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of pushed me to not only go into nursing but specialize in anesthesia. Because
That's good.
Yeah.
I am so happy we got that field at Incarnate Word.
I'm so excited for it.
And Rebecca Lee, I'm forgetting her name, but she is the director of that field, and she's really good. See, I know a lot of backstory that it's a really expensive field.
Oh, it is.
And so
It is.
Incarnate Word is making a big financial investment to start the field and to heal her. But see, we think in the long run, that's just an important part of healing.
It is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Thank you for sharing your story and also other people's stories, like for instance Carla de Santos, where you talked on her part and some of the other part of people in your life. Thank you so much for having me over and
Oh,
thank you for this
yeah.
interview.
Neat.
Next video, please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I will leave links to the books and photos of them throughout the video. There were some that didn't get shown, but I will make sure to share photos with them here at the end. You'll probably see them popping up right now. And thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.